Hello, I'm Norman Swan of Radio National's Health Report. It's accepted these days that pregnant women should not take a medication unless they have to. But that wasn't always the case. In the early 60s, there was a disaster which affected over 100 Australian families. A Victorian survivor is now seeking to right the wrongs of the past. This is Lisa McManus's story.
I think one of the things that's hardest for me to get my mind around is that I used to be very independent, very feisty, and very, I can do it. And anything that I've put my mind to, that I've wanted, that I've seen, and that I've thought that belongs in my life, I've gone out and got it. Thank you. I'll just rinse off.
She's a pretty stubborn girl. She will go out of her way to do something rather than let somebody help her.
Andrew has always been my support in doing that. But now he's having to be home more and more and more to look after me.
Lisa, emotionally, is near the end of her tether. And unfortunately, she's probably hadn't got all that long to live. Some conversation.
I don't think I felt anger until probably 5 or 6 years ago when I recognised and started to think about, well, why did it happen? How did it happen? Who was responsible for this happening? And so we decided that we needed to take on the government.
I thought, Lisa, what are you doing? You're mad. This is not an easy process. You don't have any law degrees or anything like that. But Lisa, if she's anything, she's tenacious.
Oh, good morning.
Yeah, how are you?
I had to sleep.
Yeah, all right. Nice.
Oh, thank you. So do you. I haven't got my shoes on yet.
There's a lot of things that thalidomide has taught me. It's taught me how to be protective. It's taught me how to accept all kinds of different people.
You're going to make me able to look beautiful?
I'm going to try my best.
Good on you. Yeah.
You always look beautiful.
I'm actually just eager to get it over and I'm eager to get a good sleep.
Yeah.
Part of the cruelty is that my mother only took 2 tablets. And we know now that 1 tablet could have done it. It didn't matter necessarily on how many tablets were taken, but it mattered at what particular stage that the baby was developing. The idea, I think, will be just to take 1 page off and put it to the side.
Yeah.
Thalidomide was the greatest pharmaceutical disaster in the world's history. And the consequences for Australian families are still being felt today. It destroyed families, it destroyed lives.
This is fine here. So can someone carry that for me, please? I was conceived at a time that the government were fully aware of the detrimental effects of thalidomide. But one of the things that is driving me is why isn't anybody taking responsibility for that? Team McManus, let's go kick some ass. Ready? Let's go. You get the door out.
She's fighting pretty much single-handedly for us, seeking justice for us as thalidomide victims. We try to call ourselves survivors, but the fact is we are victims.
When the news of thalidomide raised its monstrous head, the world recoiled in horror. The voices cried out, how could such a tragedy have happened, and how could it have happened to me?
Thalidomide was a drug that was invented by a German company called Grunenthal that rose from the ashes of post-war Germany. It had a number of Nazi death camp doctors on its staff.
Thalidomide was a non-addictive barbiturate and it was marketed as a sleeping pill, but it was also found to be effective for people who were feeling nauseous.
The key claim for thalidomide was that it was super safe. That was the selling pitch.
Even with her background as a nursing sister, Mrs. Iris Houghton had no inkling that when she went to the doctor 19 years ago, she was putting her unborn child in jeopardy. She remembers the conversation.
He just said I was pregnant and I can help you with the sickness, and gave me some tablets.
Many women did take it for morning sickness. There was no testing done on it to ensure that it was safe for pregnant women.
And, well, you don't question your doctor. He suggested it and I took it.
Almost immediately, the drug reached the market in Germany in 1957 and 1958. The company got reports about nerve damage. Not long after, Grunenthal started to get queries and reports of possible birth malformations linked to the drug. During the second month of pregnancy, as little as one tablet could do catastrophic damage to the embryo. Grunenthal particularly just didn't care. They found an English/Scottish company called Distillers, and in 1960, Distillers started selling thalidomide in Australia.
There were a few other subsidiary brands, but the principal product that was being distributed was Distaval. The Australian government itself not only had no policy, it had no infrastructure to deal with drugs at the time. Even at a state level, there was no system for testing drugs.
It became known in late November 1961 that the drug was causing this really enormous disaster. And rather than a really concerted public effort to raise the alarm, get word out, withdraw the drug from hospitals and pharmacies and doctors, put ads in newspapers, there was really overwhelming silence for at least 6, 7, 8 months. The federal government sat on its hands.
In March of 1962, Mum and Dad moved up to outback Queensland in Cloncurry, where Dad had taken up post as a flying doctor. There's Dad. I would have been conceived in June of 1962. And a couple of weeks after conception, Mum and Dad had had a fight over something. Their, anxieties, whatever, was running high. My brother was 14 years of age at the time and he had been prescribed some Distaval for anxiety and depression. Mum was extremely anxious, extremely upset, and she took 2 of these tablets that were my brother's, trying to find some peace. And a couple of weeks later, they were sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning. She opened the paper and she saw a headline that deformed babies were being born, and that's the word they used, deformed babies were being born due to thalidomide. Her heart stopped and she put the paper down and she said to my father, "I've taken these tablets." I imagine that his heart must have been in his mouth as well for the whole pregnancy.
And eventually, information about the malformations became public all around the world.
Every hospital, every nurse have been notified. Every woman in this country must be aware that it's most important that they check their medicine cabinet, that they do not take this drug.
President Kennedy issued a warning about thalidomide, and that's how seriously it was taken there. In this country, there was kind of a reticence to talk about it, didn't want to alarm people, didn't want to scare mums. I mean, that reticence to actually take real action had consequences.
As soon as I was born, my father was ushered out of the delivery suite. My mother distinctly remembers the midwife screaming and running out in tears. It was a shock, it was a heartache, but she fell in love with me immediately and got on with it. And that's what they did. Mum and Dad got on with it in outback Queensland.
The Australian government made no attempt at the time of the crisis to track, register folks that were survivors so that it could then get an idea of what the long-term effects of being a thalidomide survivor indeed was.
There were many medicos that believed we would not survive infancy. And a lot of us did.
Lisa and I are the two youngest ones that we know of. I was born with 3 little fingers virtually coming out of my shoulders, and major heart and lung issues as well.
There wasn't much information available. We went to a solicitor after Tricia was born because we knew, obviously, that there'd have to be a claim against somebody.
In Australia in the 1970s, there were about 40 people recognised as thalidomide survivors. That's obviously an enormous underestimation because there was no real search done.
In 1974, a very brave and strong father of one of our thalidomide survivors began a class action against distillers who were the distributors of thalidomide here in Australia.
There you go, Dad.
Good girl.
Those families were strapped for resources and they faced the might and the resources of a drug company, and they felt that they just had to accept what was put on the table eventually.
But of course, it was only a small amount and just a nominal amount.
Is that you? Yeah. Oh, you're very suave. When our parents were given the compensation, they signed their rights away and our rights away forever, going after another legal claim ever for that small amount.
I did not realise that, which came as a bitter blow, really. Yeah.
When I was 12, we moved to Sea Lake, which is a small community in the Mallee.
We had been warned that the new doctor's daughter was coming into town. They had a general assembly at school and just generally warned the kids because, yeah, when you do see her for the first time, it can be a little bit confronting, you know. I was probably about 16 when I first laid eyes on Lisa. She was sitting at the front on her brick fence.
He was doing an apprenticeship as an electrician, and he would always stop and say hello, and I thought he was a bit of a dish.
She was the type of girl that she's always had a great heart, great sense of humour.
One night we'd gone to see the Rocky Horror picture show with a group of friends, and Andrew was wearing fishnet stockings and black lipstick and a corset, and I just thought, I think I like this fella. I think I might love this fella.
We just wanted to spend the rest of our lives together, yeah, which was probably a pretty good move, I think. Yeah.
We've got so many. What about this one? When I thought I was ready for school.
That was priceless.
That was priceless. My mum had always been very open with me about taking tablets that caused my disability.
I can't remember much about it.
Yeah, that's okay. But the first recollection I have of her speaking to me about guilt was when I was pregnant with my first child. And I would sit and I'd talk to her about the fears that I have and, you know, what if this child has any form of disability? What if this child has issues that I can't handle?
It was always there.
What was always there, Mum?
The feeling of guilt. And it's still there.
And I was shocked because it had never occurred to me that she should feel guilty. And what was that guilt about?
What I'd done to you.
Doing a good job.
When I started school, you just started to notice kids pull their hands and their arms into the jumper sleeves and call your mum a T-Rex, and it started quite a fair bit of fighting in school because I stuck up for her and I wasn't a big kid, so I got knocked in the dirt a few times, but it was worth it.
My sister Alice's, she was nearly mum's shadow. She was so close to mum.
Make sure you cut it from top to bottom again.
I definitely do think about where Mum's health is going.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Physically, she's deteriorating. She can't bend as well. She can't tie laces anymore. Once upon a time, she could tie laces.
One thing with thalidomide, it advances your rate of ageing. And unfortunately with Lise, she's got the internal workings of a 80-year-old.
A couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to meet a lot of our survivors at a conference.
Where we all come together and we were family. We could walk around the room not being looked at or stared at or what the hell happened to you scenario, you know.
The deterioration in 6 months is just inconceivable.
It's so fast.
You are right, Lisa. We're not really surviving. We are in a downward spiral. Human disasters.
The very, very limited things that we were able to do with our disabilities as we were growing up, we're losing. So we're losing the ability to dress ourselves and to toilet ourselves and to feed ourselves and to live on a day-to-day basis without significant pain in our lives. And the fear of what will come tomorrow for us is overwhelming.
The money that we were awarded by distillers back in our teens had well run out in our adult life.
Then, this is where it gets quite tricky, Distillers was bought out by a company called Diageo in 1997. They felt that they had inherited a responsibility to look after us and give us an ex gratia gift, which they did. And by jingies, they're the only guys in this whole shocking mess that have actually stood up and said, we need to do something for you guys. For all these years, we've gone through life thinking, well, there's just us. And we knew that there had to be more out there. This drug was sold in millions.
I've fought big tobacco. I've fought the Catholic Church over sex abuse and James Hardy over asbestos. And I would never believed when I retired that the most satisfying piece of litigation I would ever do was in front of me, was yet to happen.
In 2012, Mr. Peter Gordon took on the responsibility of saying there has to be more thalidomide people. And he advertised in newspapers and magazines to say, if you think you are thalidomide, then call me.
Neither company ever tested a single thalidomide tablet on a single pregnant animal. We entered into litigation for the uncompensated group against both the German inventor of the drug, Grunenthal, and against the English distributor, Distillers.
Then out of the, I will say, the good corporate citizenship and the generosity of Diageo, we got a settlement that was too good to refuse.
A Melbourne woman born without arms or legs because of thalidomide has won a multi-million-dollar settlement. It's a groundbreaking decision, and the victory will be shared by thalidomide victims across Australia and New Zealand.
More than 100 men and women affected by the drug thalidomide will be compensated.
Because our parents signed away our rights, we weren't part of that. But I felt really pleased for those people that did get picked up and did get identified and had their day in court.
The compensation payers have been the English drug company. The federal government in Australia has never paid compensation.
Which is at odds with the way that the United Kingdom addressed this issue, the way that Europe addressed this issue, where government and industry came together to acknowledge a mutual failing and co-contribute to support regimes for survivors.
There's still unfinished business. Our own government has still never acknowledged us. And I think it stirred in Lisa the injustice of it all.
Mum is definitely a bit of a Erin Brockovich. She likes to do her research.
So the goal tomorrow is to find that one document that will say, guilty, Your Honour. It was unbelievably nerve-wracking. I had to get this right. Like, I was representing the group.
So we've gone up to the National Archives and we were in there for a couple of days.
We opened files and there were the letters that were signed off by the Health Minister of the time, Minister Wade. So this is a letter from Distillers announcing that they've pulled those thalidomide products off. And this is in November of 1961.
To Dear Doctor, yeah.
To Dear Doctor.
Yeah. It's sitting in Harry Wade's bloody file here. This is written from Distillers to the doctors. And a copy of this letter is in the Health Minister's files.
And he received that in December of 61.
Yep.
There were letters in the handwriting of opposition leaders to Minister Wade saying, what are you going to do about these babies? And his handwriting on the bottom of these to be returned back to them saying, well, I'm not going to do anything. We don't want to alarm the public, or no action is needed. It wasn't until August of 62 that Australia withdrew it from sale here, but yet did nothing to recall it from people's homes, didn't notify the public. I was conceived in this time, in this period that he sat and did nothing. It's a really hard letter to read, isn't it? It's sort of like, and it's not just me, it's quite a few of us. Okay.
You all right?
No, I'm not all right.
Pretty crooked.
And to think that it could have been prevented is just inexcusable. We want that recognition. We want an apology for what happened to us, not only to us, but most importantly to our parents. We need to get this letter written. We want senators, we want local members.
Lisa and I would sit at the table and we'd construct letters and stuff like that to go out to the police.
Thank you. I know in one sitting we sent 222 out. We got 16 responses, which, it was extremely, extremely disappointing.
The challenges before us now are profound.
Just as I thought that Lisa was going to run out of steam physically and emotionally, we were incredibly fortunate that a new senator entered the scene.
We had a letter from Lisa McManus. The whole thing about this case said to me, we need to do something. If we don't do something, nobody else is going to.
We're going to be hearing from another cohort of survivors. I then encountered a similar reaction to what Lisa had been encountering for years, which was, this issue is so complicated and the group is so small. Jordan, why are you bothering us with this? We've got ourselves a ball game, okay. And so I had a couple of conversations with crossbench colleagues, with folks in the Labour Party. All right. We decided to set up a Senate inquiry to look into the thalidomide issue.
I thought, yay, Lisa and Andrew, and oh my goodness, we've just won the lottery.
So it seems to me to be just failing to recognise the urgency of the problem that greatly exacerbated the effect.
Yes, and for the government to sit and be as contemptuous as they have been and dismissive as they have been, it's alarming. We're getting the chance to say, this is what thalidomide is, this is how it affected us, this is what we need.
I remember feeling very embarrassed going down to the street with my mum. And I felt constantly guilty for that.
And then, dear Andrew, when Andrew got on board, I thought, oh my goodness.
Thank you for sharing.
I hope this is going to go down all right.
Obscene. history that should never have happened. The warning signs were there. The Yanks didn't do it. The Kiwis, at least they sent people out there to get rid of the shit. Our bloke just sat in his hands. Sorry.
You know, he got pretty passionate and he swore. And then he apologised for swearing. And I thought, my God, you know, with everything you have been through, with the shit you've had to face, that you feel like you come before us and then you speak like a human being and feel like you have to apologise for it.
It's not over yet. We still have another hearing to be held.
How are you, my buddy? How are you?
Yeah, good. When can we say definitively that the Australian Health Department knew of the negative impacts of taking thalidomide on children?
Throughout 1961.
Our estimate is that 30 people, or 20% of the entire thalidomide cohort, as is known in Australia today, had their mums ingest that, be exposed to thalidomide after the government actually knew. Governments ought to be recovering costs from Grunenthal. Governments ought to be recovering costs from the company that actually visited this disaster upon Australia in an entirely avoidable way.
Well, today we've seen a real game changer. We've had Peter Gordon tell us that, in his opinion, not only is there a moral case for action on part of the Australian government, there's actually potentially a legal case.
It's very much our make or break time. We won't ever get another Senate inquiry into this. And this is our future. We have to get this across the line.
Now, if the government comes back and said, you know, you've got nothing, no matter what other governments have done, we don't think, you know, you've got a case, then I think that'd just about destroy it.
That's the first time I've ever tried it. I need to ask what this one is then.
Yeah, I've seen dramatic changes with Mum in the last few years, physically and mentally.
I do remember very clearly sitting with my daughter one day. It was over at Parmigiana. We were having lunch together. I was going through a lot of nerve pain at the time. I said, I want you to know that Dad and I have spoken about this, and this is really important for me that I'm not left to you to look after. And that I would end my life before I would allow that to happen.
Well, Lisa and I have probably got a pact, I suppose, that we'll end our lives together, or you know, as long as I can't look after her and she can't look after me, then we'll. Unfortunately, it's yeah, maybe step in front of that bus. Yeah.
You gonna look after Mum? Thank you. I know you just sat down, but...
It was definitely shocking and took quite a while to sink in, probably a couple of weeks. And once when it sunk in, it was quite scary because you see how fast she is deteriorating.
I'm nervous.
I got my phone on speed dial, 000.
Mum used to ride horses. She used to ride it when she was younger. And then, obviously, that over time stopped.
Okay, I'll just have a sit now. The legs are feeling a bit wobbly.
And here I am now at 55 years of age saying, I want to ride horses again.
1, 2, 3. Good job. I'm on.
Hopefully we get there before it's too late.
I've got my own boots and my own hat, and so I look the part. I probably don't look that pretty on the horse, but I don't care because I'm not there for looks. I'd be in a lot of trouble if I'd been doing things for looks.
Left leg. I'm doing a good job. Keep turning.
She's just a fighter.
Left rein, right.
She really does make you proud. You know, she had to fight her whole life, but yeah, she's done it, and she'll continue to do it.
Oops. Ta-da! Thank you, I did it.